happy to have you on our very first podcast of the Hollywood Music Workshop.
Well, it's an honor to be on the very, very first one.
Yes, perfect.
Just hope I don't make it the last.
No, absolutely not. So you will be with the Hollywood Music Workshop again this summer in 2023 from July 29 to July 31, so the last 3 days, for the course of composing for drama, movie, and TV series. So I just thought of a couple of questions, and I thought the first one would be good, as I remember things from your class, as I had the advantage to listen to your class too. So every composer follows the storyline of the TV series or of the movie, the film, in order to express it in his music or her music. So I remember from your class that you were talking about finding the empathy behind it. So what would that mean exactly for the composer?
Well, that's, it's such a tricky question, that, because so much, I think what I'm trying to imply is that, being a composer is one thing. Being a composer for film is, in many ways, a much broader outlook that you need, because you're not just concentrating on what you think might sound good. You're actually getting involved in a whole lot of, in a storyline, and you have to understand the what's going on in the script, and what you have to get inside people's heads and understand how they're feeling. And a lot of that, what I'm sort of implying in that, is a lot of that starts from quite early on. That's why I think, when people read a lot of books, reading books is a very good way to, to get into empathy. Watch a lot of film, try and put yourself in the place of somebody like that, because, when you're then going to require, you're being asked to write, like, for instance, a love theme, for instance, it's going to be good for you to have, to know what that feels like. And I suppose what I'm really trying to get at is that it's a much more kind of, the phrase being like a Renaissance man or woman is a kind of, it's much more than music. It's about understanding in many ways what it is to be human. Something that's is what I'm really trying to get at.
So it means that if I can delve more into stories through books or through films, then I can, as a composer, get a better approach how to put it into music, or even find my own way to put it into music.
I think it's more about, when you come to start doing film, is that you're in a better place to understand what is going to be required of you. I think is really the training, that's needed. A lot of people go into it thinking that just being able to write a good tune is going to be, good enough. That's not going to be good enough, because a lot of the time that's not what you're going to be required, to do. Your requirement is to give meaning to what you see on the screen.
So that means to actually really to delve into the story and understanding from beginning to the end, and feel when there is tension, where there's not tension, where there's a certain emotion. So you really got to integrate it before you go to the music.
You got to have a plan. You got to, watch the whole thing all the way through, many times probably, understand exactly what it is, why, talk to the director about, why do you want music there? What is it what are you not seeing on the screen that you want the music to do? Because that's what music is very good at. It can imply things that are not there. it can be very useful like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's right. So when you see the film or let's say I would see the film as a composer, I could also already get the impression what would I like to transport with the music that is not so obvious with the picture. So
yeah,
that comes out more. So the emotion carries, and which emotion is it? And
exactly.
yeah,
And also you can use music to to highlight certain things that might not be entirely obvious, on the screen. Or you can, I mean, like in the beginning of Downton Abbey, for instance, the following the telegraph poles, it's just quite a nice shot, really. But no matter how good the camera work is, it can't tell you that what's being the telegraph is the information of the telegraph is going to be really important. It's the music
yes,
that does that.
yes, right. So that's why you got to know the storyline, right?
Yeah,
You start with
exactly.
the
But why
title
is it
music,
why-
and you know
we're
uh,
following a telegraph? The audience, no, don't know what is in it, but it's my job to make it important, and have significance.
right, right. Um, is there a certain way composer can train himself or herself to um, find his best way or her best way to put this into music? What I feel, let's say, from the storyline or from a character.
Yeah, I mean that again, that's kind of to do with a technique. I think in the beginning you have to understand that this is what your job is. And to begin with, I did slightly struggle, and then I found ways and harmonies that I knew I could mold, from very quickly from one thing, into another. And so when I start out, again, I've already got an idea that, well, this harmony is going to have to be very, very simple, because at certain times I'm going to have to move over to such and such, which is a much more complicated and kind of, maybe a much busier, style of music. So it's kind of, because everybody composes in a slightly different way. So it's not really so much about training somebody how to actually write in that way, because I think it's much more to do about getting the concept of what it is that they're being asked to do is probably the most important thing. I mean, somebody could do that Downton Abbey first scene, probably equally as well in a completely different way, but still understanding the concept of what's required. So, because I don't really want to pin people down and say, well, your harmony must be really complicated here, or really, or really simple there. People will find different ways, to do it. But as long as they've understand the process and what's required of them, I think in the beginning is the most important thing.
Yeah, I guess so too, because of course, since Hollywood Music Workshop exists, I listen much more carefully to the music that is coming with a film, because
Yeah,
usually we don't pay so much attention to it. But by now, I can say if it really touches me or carries me
yeah,
through the story or not, or if it is just so we have something that is
yeah,
there
yeah,
with a picture, and I guess it's this process where the composer really internalizes the story and the characters and everything. So until you feel able to start with the work, there is a
yeah,
process
absolutely.
before. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yep,
yeah.
yep, yep.
So I guess this is like with not only with a situation, it's also with the character. So would you say that you delve into each character, like let's say the main characters, at least that carry the story, to give them a color or character or something?
Yeah, I mean, although again, it's probably more. I'd say the music is usually more associated with what's going on inside their head, how are they feeling about themselves, or what's about to happen, or what situation they're in. And the other one, especially in Downton, is much more about the relationships between people. So rather than sort of individual characters, it's much more about how people interact with one another. I mean, particularly in sort of long running TV series where there can be quite a lot of can be multiple storylines going on over like a 10-hour TV series, and the music kind of works like a shorthand. It kind of as you cut or move from one scene to another, it sets the scene up as to, and already you kind of get an idea of what the relationship is between these people. Okay, they're married, but actually they're going through a tough time. That can, because people can miss episodes as well, and not kind of, so there's quite a lot of that going on, particularly in TV, much less in film, probably because it's much shorter, and in film there tends to be maximum 2 or 3 storylines going on, really.
Oh yeah, right. Mm-hmm. So, like, I think, as you said, that Downton Abbey is especially like a TV series that's about the characters and how they interact.
Yeah.
So, the other TV series I just saw partly, I think, like the White Queen or others. So, are they are a bit different, right? It's not so much about all the interaction.
So, the White Queen, I'd say the music was much more about it's much more about politics, actually. The politic, the and the grasp for power, and the people who have the power and the ones that don't, and how they are feeling about that, and so a lot of that was, and also sort of greed as well. There was a lot, so yeah, so it was less about the characters. I mean, there was obviously quite a bit of romance in the White Queen, because the White Queen was it was a TV series about the Tudors in the 15th century, but it was all from the women's point of view.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah. And for instance, when King Richard is killed at the very end of episode 1, and Henry the 6th or 7th, Henry the 6th, I think, is kind of crowned. Actually, the camera is on his mother, because his mother's been scheming right from episode 1 to get him in there. So a lot of the White Queen is much more about intrigue and politics, and but again, a lot of it is internal about what I mean, particularly for women in period drama, particularly, say, something like the 18th or 19th century. A lot of people don't express how they feel, particularly women in those.
That's right, yeah.
So the music is doing a lot of that work. I mean, there was one television series I did called Bleak House, which is a very famous Dickens book, and it was a really famous BBC series. It was like 16 episodes, and one of the main characters in that spent most of the entire series just looking into the distance, absolutely miserable, almost all the way through. And she was very good at it, but the music was doing an awful lot of work as well, because she can't say, she couldn't say. It's the society that she was living in, wouldn't permit her to to say why she was so miserable. So
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah. So like just would interest me that you had the Downton Abbey series, and then you had the Downton Abbey film too.
Yeah.
So how would you compare that composing wise?
Yeah, it was it was much easier than I thought it was going to be, because I thought it would be, but because the cast is still basically intact, and to be honest, the storyline kind of moves on directly from the end of the TV series. So in a way, it's like it didn't really, finish. It just had to be on a grander scale, and there's a lot less kind of cutting from between scenes, because there's in the films there really is only like 2 or 3 different storylines. So I suppose kind of the music got distilled quite a bit more into, there was much less variety in it. It needed to concentrate on 2 or 3, specific things each time. In the last movie there was a lot of new music, because they ended up going to, traveling to France for quite a bit of the time. So the music was about that, and then there was a storyline involving them, actually Downton Abbey being used to make a film, one of the, very early days of film. So that needed its kind of its own music as well. But then there were there were those 2 storylines, and then the rest of it was probably material that just came from directly out of the TV series, because the
Yeah, there
storyline
should be a connection, of
carry on.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, fantastic. Um, so maybe we could talk a little bit about your course.
Yeah.
So how will it be structured, more or less? So we'll see some film clips, or you will have question answer and do some exercises, or will it be along these lines?
Yeah, I'll probably spend a little bit of time explaining, how I got to where I am, and why I think that's important. And then I'm going to choose some key moments of things that I've done over the last probably 10 years. Um, I'll go into them in depth, and I'll explain why I did what I did. Um, and in that time, people will be very free to ask me, questions.
Oh, great.
I'd be very happy to answer. And then the idea is that people get a chance to explore those clips themselves. And then also I have some other exercises, to do with doing film, particularly to do with, harmony, and what, chord structures do to storylines, and how important that is. And there's a few little exercises that I have, which I've been using for a couple of years now, which people seem to enjoy doing, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'll be there to constantly, give feedback, and then I usually open, people will demonstrate what they've done to everybody.
Oh, great.
And
Yeah.
and then I like it when everybody kind of pitches in and says what they like about it, or what they didn't think worked, or or suggestions, so that we end up kind of like a class all together, hopefully just being able to discuss and chat things through,
Yeah,
as much
fantastic.
as much as possible.
So it means they get film clips from you,
Yeah,
and they can put the music to it, and then we all listen to it,
yeah,
and and have an open discussion. And
yeah,
yeah, remember, it was always very fruitful. Like, you get new ideas, and you hear opinions from other people. You didn't think
it's
about.
also,
And
yeah, it's fascinating for me what other people do,
yeah,
with clips that I know, I've done, and
yeah,
um, yeah, because some of them are usually, are all everybody's always seems to have something, some, grain of kind of something really good in it. I mean, because of course, some of these clips that I'm showing to people, I've spent 3 or 4 days on, and I'm expecting people to do something, usually within a couple of hours.
right.
So, we have to be understanding, but they're usually a very good exercise.
Absolutely, just to find the approach, because afterwards
Yeah,
you still can do work with it, and you improve it and work on your own. But you
yeah,
find a certain approach, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But I'll be there all the
great.
time to help with people
Yeah, yeah,
understand that.
yeah. Great, great. And afterwards, we go and grab a beer or
Well,
a gin tonic.
we carry the discussion on in the bar, basically.
Fantastic. Either with beer, coffee, or gin tonic, something like that. I
Yeah,
remember.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Rolf, is there any question you can think of or something? I will put on the light in here meanwhile. So something that would interest you to ask?
Uh, well, we've talked about characters, but we haven't talked about other. What could be interesting maybe is to hear more about specific compositional maybe approaches or instrumentational approaches. Do you typically, like if we talk about characters or music, do you have a specific sound in mind always, or a specific instrument that you want to attach to a character, and somehow have that instrument reflect the character?
Yeah, I do that quite a lot, Rolf. Yeah, yeah. Um, again that to me, I'm not sure I have any kind of set sort of Bible as to, what a character. Okay, this is the kind of character that needs a bassoon, because bassoon can actually do a lot of, it can do a lot of really interesting things. Um, I, uh, I again, like I always, the picture itself is always the most important to me. So I'm always looking at the pictures I'm writing to. I'm never, I never compose away from it. So if I find that, um, I I might try out a bassoon for, for some kind of comic character or something like that. And then I'll know immediately if it works because I'm looking at the screen, all the time. Um, I mean, there are some jobs you just know that they're going to be electronic. They're going to have not so much, instrumentation in it. Particularly ones with a lot of dialogue, you have to be careful with the orchestration. Um, I find because a lot of kind of soloistic kind of instruments can kind of get in the way a bit. So, I mean, that is something that we could really talk about is instrumentation in not so much in to do with character, but to do with the rest of the sound that's going on. The dialogue and the sound effects and how you deal with that. Because quite often I do end up thinking about register more than instruments. What register is this going to have the biggest impact? Is this bass, or is it something really high, loud, or is it something I can get away with in the middle?
Yeah, great answer, because those things are um, quite important when you're making film. If you're composing something that's really low, when you have a lot of sound design, for instance, like engines roaring, nobody's going
Oh,
to hear the music. And if you're putting a huge instrument in the middle register when there's somebody talking, nobody's going to hear any of that.
exactly. They're going to bring it down,
Right. So it can
so
be
that you
quite
can hear the
crucial.
dialogue. Yeah,
Uh,
no matter how you mix it, you
yeah.
know. Yeah.
And then they end up taking away the music, which is of course
Aye.
not ideal. I have one
Yeah.
more question. It has to do with the workshop. So it's March now, so we're in spring. If participants want to prepare somehow, what would you suggest that they do in preparation for the class?
That's a good question because that's a tricky question, Rolf, because I mean I could give people the clips beforehand, but really the point, I need to explain it and I need to take them through it first. But we could change that. I mean, we could, if you wanted people to, I mean, I guess, be as proficient as possible on your DAW. Have sounds, maybe have a template ready to go, a film music template with a string ensemble and some percussion and some with a piano. You get, maybe work on your template to have it ready before, so you can get going immediately.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I was about to say write some music or be prepared to write some music.
I'll be prepared to write some music, yeah.
But the template definitely helps because then
a template. I know. In fact, I'm surprised I haven't thought of that before. I mean, some people do already, but yeah.
Thank you.
But I think we also, I could look it up now, but I think on the website we wrote that you would bring clips from Downton and also from the White Queen or something. So actually to look into that material, just see some of that to really get more the feel of the story.
Yep. Because we could do
like that.
So we could do the Downton movies probably.
Mm-hmm.
The White Queen, The Last Kingdom, which is so different.
Right, The Last Kingdom.
Yeah.
Right.
And then
I think we have it on our website.
Do you get Shetland?
I think not in Austria.
No, it's really big in America now.
But I'm sure one can find it in the internet.
Yeah.
Shetland.
Yeah. Shetland. I might do something from Shetland this time.
I'll remember it. I'll compare it. So that would be the Downton White King and Shetland. Yes, White
and
Queen.
the Last Kingdom's a good one.
Last Kingdom, right?
Yeah, it's a big Netflix show, and it's just about to come out. The final movie of that. So I've just finished the Netflix movie,
right?
Of the Last Kingdom, and that's just about to come out in April.
In April, right?
Yeah, and that's likely to go to #1 in Netflix.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice! I'm looking forward to that.
It's so popular. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So good. Yeah, that's good to look into that, and then get a good idea what template to prepare or what sounds to prepare.
Yeah,
something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, looking forward to that. Yeah, okay. John, is anything you can think of you still would like to say?
I can't think so. I don't think so, Lilo.
Okay. I think we covered everything, right? So everything for now. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, great. Thank you, John.